The ion storm had come without warning, as they always did on Keth 7. Commander Vex Athari watched the tactical display flicker and die, his four eyes widening in alarm. The battlefield, a scarred wasteland of crystalline rock and smoking craters, vanished beneath a wall of electromagnetic fury that devoured everything in its path. "All units, emergency evacuation," he transmitted, but static was his only answer. The storm had already severed communications. Vexathari's people, the Kethra, were survivors. They had endured 3 centuries of war against the Dominion, but ion storms were death itself, raw electromagnetic chaos that could fry neural systems and strip flesh from bone in minutes. Protocol was absolute: retreat to shielded bunkers and pray. But 2 of his scouts, mere cubs barely past their first molt, had been positioned at the forward observation post. With the human, Sarah. The human liaison officer had volunteered for the assignment despite warnings. Humans always volunteered, Vexathari had learned. They possessed a peculiar madness, a willingness to stand where others fled. Command had sent her to observe Kethra combat doctrine, to learn their ways. Instead, she had taught them something far more unsettling about her own species. "Sir, we must seal the bunkers," his second officer urged, mandibles clicking with anxiety. Vexathari stared at the storm wall advancing across his screens before they went dark. Those cubs were his brother's offspring. And Sarah? Sarah had looked him in the eye that morning and promised she'd bring them home. Humans and their promises. "Seal the bunkers," he ordered, his voice hollow. "May the ancestors receive them with honor." The storm raged for 17 hours. When it finally passed, Vexathari led the recovery team himself, expecting only to retrieve bodies, if the storm had left anything to retrieve. The forward post had been completely exposed, nothing but a small rockcrete structure offering minimal protection against conventional weapons, utterly inadequate against an ion storm. What they found defied explanation. The rockcrete structure was gone, vaporized. The ground was glass where lightning had struck repeatedly. Equipment was melted slag. But in a shallow depression where the post had stood, surrounded by a circular pattern of scorched earth, knelt Sarah. She was barely conscious, her body locked in a rigid crouch. Her armor, standard human military issue, nothing special, was blackened and cracked, sparking with residual energy. But beneath her, pressed against her torso and wrapped in her arms, were the 2 cubs. Alive. "Impossible," breathed the medical officer. "Nothing survives direct exposure." "Get them out," Vexathari commanded. It took 4 soldiers to pry Sarah's arms open. Even unconscious, her muscles had locked in place, refusing to release her charges. The cubs tumbled free, whimpering but unharmed, their scales barely singed. Sarah collapsed immediately. In the medical bay, the mystery deepened. Sarah's armor hadn't been particularly advanced. No exotic shielding, no specialized storm protection. Yet her suit system showed she had manually rerouted all power, including life support, to create an expanding electromagnetic Aegis. She had turned herself into a living Faraday cage, grounding the storm's fury through her own body while her armor's field generators created a protective bubble for the cubs. "This should have killed her in seconds," the medical officer reported to Vexathari. "The amperage alone, her nervous system should be fried, her heart should have stopped 100 times over." "But," Vexathari prompted, "but humans are different. Their bodies have redundancies we don't fully understand. When her heart did stop, and it did 17 times according to her suit logs, it restarted itself. Their neural tissue has remarkable regenerative properties. She subjected herself to what should have been lethal electrical trauma continuously for 17 hours. Vexathari looked through the observation window. Sarah remained unconscious, her body twitching occasionally as damaged nerves misfired. Burns covered 30% of her skin, but she would live. The cubs were already awake, asking for her. Logan arrived 3 days later, his transport barely touching down before he burst into the medical facility. The human military attaché was larger than Sarah, scarred from previous deployments, with eyes that had seen too much combat. "Where is she?" he demanded. Vexathari led him to her room. Sarah was awake now, propped up against pillows, wrapped in regenerative bandages. The two cubs sat on her bed, carefully avoiding her injuries, refusing to leave her side. Logan stopped in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed, a short, sharp bark of sound. "Of course," he said. "Of course you did." "You're not surprised?" Vexathari asked. Logan shook his head. Sarah once held a damaged reactor core with her bare hands for 40 seconds while the engineering team evacuated. Took 6 months to fully recover from the radiation poisoning. He paused. "She's received 17 official reprimands for violating safety protocols to protect others." "Your species is insane," Vexathari said, but there was no accusation in his voice, only awe. "Maybe," Logan admitted, "but we're also stubborn, and we don't leave people behind, especially kids." He looked at the cubs, who chirped softly at Sarah. "Any kids?" Sarah's eyes fluttered open. She saw Logan and managed a weak smile. "Hey, boss." "Hey, hero," he replied. "Ready to go home?" She glanced at the cubs, then at Vexathari. "They okay?" "Because of you," Vexathari said softly. "They're perfect." Sarah nodded, satisfied, and closed her eyes again. The story of the human who shielded the cubs beneath her Aegis spread through the Kethra forces like wildfire. It reached the High Command, then the civilian population, then their allies across 3 star systems. Humans were strange, everyone agreed, fragile compared to so many species, yet possessing an inexplicable durability when it mattered most. They broke their bodies without hesitation for others, even for aliens they'd known mere weeks. In the Kethra language, they created a new word that day, Saraketh, which meant one who stands against the storm. It became the highest honor they could bestow. And when the war finally ended 2 years later, the peace treaty was signed by Vexathari's brother, father of the cubs, who had become High Commander. The first clause guaranteed humanity's children would be taught alongside Kethra cubs in integrated schools, so both species could learn what it meant to protect one another. Because that's what Sarah had shown them. Humanity didn't just survive storms, they stood in front of them, arms spread wide, and dared the universe to do its worst.